You're listening to Stand Tall and Own It, the podcast for high-performing female leaders who are ready to make an impact by discovering the safety that comes from understanding their own value and exercising their own authority. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, and I'm here to tell you it is time to just truly be you, my strong friend. It's time to stand tall and own it. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Stand Tall and Own It. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, the Intentional Optimist, and I am bringing you another stellar guest today. Her name is Joanna Kleinman. She integrates psychology, science, metacognition, which I had to look up, and intention to empower individuals and organizations globally. This is my kind of lady, right? She's a psychotherapist, a leadership coach, and a best-selling author, CEO, and founder of, are you ready for this? Dethroning Your Inner Critic. And if you're anything like me, you've been waiting for this very conversation. Her impactful tools for growth are encapsulated in the #1 best-selling book, Dethroning Your Inner Critic. And her 30-plus year study of the human mind has produced a unique framework, literally called the MIND, M-I-N-D framework, that will help you finally create the joy, fulfillment, and satisfaction that you've only had in fleeting moments. Joanna's influence extends to national platforms like Good Morning America and The Doctors, where she acts as a catalyst for transformation and a guiding light for those seeking purpose and passion in their lives. Welcome with me, Joanna Kleinman. Hey, Joanna, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here.
So I've given just a brief intro for my people who probably don't know you. I didn't know you until I found you on Podmatch. And so I want to make sure that people understand the gravitas that you bring to this conversation, because you are both a psychologist and a coach. So why don't you give us a little bit of your story and how you got into doing what it is that you do?
Oh, goodness. Okay. I was introduced to self-growth and personal transformation, honestly, at the age of 9. I feel very grateful to my parents for introducing me to that. And my childhood was filled with a lot of anxiety and inner struggle and all that stuff. And so my journey was really that I knew at a very young age that helping people to really understand how to fundamentally shift their perspective about themselves and life in general had a profound ripple effect, not just in their personal experience, but in the way that their relationships were formed and created and really the trajectory of their lives. So that's been my path for my whole
Wow.
entire life. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
lovely. I mean, so many of us and so many of the women I talk to don't have that story. They have a story of, I thought this and I was these things, and then I wandered off and did this other stuff, and then I came back and now I'm finally myself again. And so,
Well, I have to say, okay,
okay,
just because I knew what my path was does not mean that I didn't have every single bit of what you're talking about and then
sure,
some professionally, personally, in my 27-year marriage and raising my kid, everything in between.
sure.
So yes, I have that too. And
Well,
and that's the part, the inner struggle that I kept experiencing
mhm,
despite the fact that I was on this personal growth journey, right? It's like I got to the point where I was like, this is not just about mitigating
right.
circumstances. There's something much deeper here. And that actually had me um, bridge the gap that I think is between psychotherapy and coaching. That there's like a gap that's where I fall in, is the gap between the two.
Well, go a little deeper there, because a lot of people, when I tell people I'm a leadership coach, or when I was calling myself a life coach for a little while, people were like, what does that mean? And when I start working with people, a lot of times they'll want to go backwards in things. And I try to draw the line as a coach by saying, I help you get from this place to that place. Helping you work through the things that got you here might or might not be something that I can help you with. It may be something that you need help from a psychologist or a psychotherapist. Is that
Yes.
accurate at all? Have I said it well?
I think that I absolutely think you said it well. I
Okay.
think that here's the thing. Um, Life is about always, right? Creation. I mean, we are creative human
Right.
beings, okay, right? So we always want to be designing a life of expansiveness and vision
Mhm.
and creativity, right? But here's the thing. If we don't understand really the deeper mechanisms that drive our thoughts, our beliefs, our
Yes.
emotions, and our behaviors, even if we have these big visions of who we want to be and where we want to go, that old mind is going to keep creating the same patterns.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that we need to go deep into our past and dissect all these layers. We really don't, right? But we want to understand that the same mind that's landing on, I'm so frustrated because I told my husband to take the garbage out and he forgot, or I'm so frustrated because I want to write this book and I don't feel that I have enough, confidence to be able to do that. Whatever it is, right? What we have to understand is that the um the thoughts that we're having, we had the same version of these thoughts 10 years ago. And
Hmm.
10 years before that, we had a 7-year-old version of it and a 17-year-old version of it. And when we can see it as a pattern, we can't change the pattern, but we can really understand what's happening both in our mind, in our heart, in our nervous system. And we can, in the moment, unhook ourselves from what I call that conditioned and automatic mind,
Hmm.
created a conditioned and automatic self.
This is a little different. This is I like this a lot. Sorry. If you're watching on video, you notice that I'm over here typing, and this is how I make sure that I get it all down because I type as I go or as I listen. But um, a lot of times, especially in the coaching world, we talk about changing new thought patterns. And I just
Yeah.
heard you say it's that you can't change those.
Yes.
So this is
Yes.
where we're going to walk right into the stand tall and own it business here. And
Yes.
is this something that we just need to own about ourselves? And it's a little bit, this is where self-awareness comes in and say, I'm aware that I have these thought patterns. How do I mitigate them? What do you do with them? Because
Yeah.
you talk about having practical ideas of doing things to actually get around that. How do you do that unhooking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I think that that's what frustrates people the most is that they want to eliminate that part of themselves and
Yeah.
they want to change that part of their
We want to make
mind. And
new roads, new paths. That's what we want.
absolutely, that's
Yeah.
right. So, but the thing is, own it, right? Stand tall and own it.
Hmm.
What we have to understand is that we are always going to have that automatic mind and that automatic self because it it was imprinted in us starting when we were very small.
Sure.
And we've spent so much of our life gathering evidence to support it that the most powerful thing we can do is recognize that we are separate from it. So
Mm.
we don't have to keep trying to change it and fix it and make it go away. Because, Andrea, here's the thing, and I think you probably have experienced this. I certainly experience this all the time. As we are stepping into our right, the our biggest self, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we're
yeah. Hmm.
really taking those actions that change our lives, that inner voice does not get quieter, it gets louder.
Yeah.
And so, that's where people get so frustrated, right? Where they think they're taking like 10 steps backwards, or I've done all this work and now, oh my God, here I am again and I can't believe it. And they throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. After every
If
time.
you, right, if you can know that is not you. That is not your authentic self. That is the voice of your automatic self. That's the voice that I call your inner critic.
Hmm.
But it's not just the voice that convinces you that you're not enough. It's also the voice that convinces you, oh, look, I wrote my book. Look, I finally am enough. Look, I got this promotion. Look, I finally am enough because that lasts a New York minute,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
And then we're back in the hamster wheel onto the next thing that we need from the outside world, from our life, from our fixing ourselves. We
Mhm.
need it from somebody else to give us our value.
Yeah.
And it's it just keeps us stuck in those same patterns.
Yeah. And, none of us really want to hear that it's not going to go away.
I know.
But
That's
and because the first thing we think is like despair. That's the first thing that pops to mind. But the
yeah.
reality is, what I hear you saying is that um, so I talk about our ABCs, our assumptions, beliefs, and conditioning.
Mhm.
And it sounds like some of this is similar, and we approach it from different sides, maybe, of the issue, because
Yes.
I talk about working down through those, understanding what your conditioning is, so you can decide whether or not you want to keep your beliefs, and understanding what your conditioning is, so you can understand that you do have certain assumptions and decide whether or not those serve you and the people around you, and it sounds like what you're saying is that that conditioned mind, I love that we've used that similar language,
Yes.
is this piece that you need to understand is there. It's part of you. You own it. You don't need to shame yourself over it. And you need to understand it does some sort of good things and sort of bad things for you, but you don't have to let it be in control.
Yes. I almost think it goes a little bit deeper than that.
Okay.
I think there are two selves. And I think that the automatic self lives in our mind, and that our authentic self really lives in our heart.
Okay.
And our mind has very different language than the language that's in our heart. And when we learn to decipher the language that's in our automatic mind, and we can really tap into very different language that's more the language of our heart, that comes with very different thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and
Okay.
choices that change the trajectory of our lives. And so I created the MIND method. MIND is an acronym, but I created it so that people really had a very concrete way where they could decipher, is this my inner critic self or is this my authentic self? And they can
Mm.
really distinguish the different language of the two.
Really quick, for some people listening, I think a lot of people don't really know what we would call the difference between the mind and the heart.
Yes,
How
that's,
how would you describe that?
yeah. So, the language of the heart comes when we're able to be in stillness and silence and ask ourselves some really important questions. Like, we can actually turn towards those uncomfortable feelings that we don't want to feel, the
Okay.
sadness, the anger, the loneliness, the fear, the inadequacy. And we can actually ask it some questions. What are you trying to show me?
Mm,
What am I really, right? What is this anger trying to show me? What am I really most deeply afraid of? Right? What's my worst fear? And when we get quiet and we just let that answer emerge, it's right there.
yeah.
We just have to learn how to sit back and listen. And we get an access to ourselves that's usually kept hidden because we're so like our whole life is just organized around that automatic mind and everything that it's been guiding us towards for our whole life.
Would it be fair to say that the mind is what's talking and the heart is what's listening? Like the mind is a talker, and for the heart, we have to actually just listen.
Well, this is what I would say. Yes, the mind is talking to us nonstop. Okay. And all of that mind chatter, when we really look underneath it, um, it's organized around some pretty basic human fundamental needs
Yep.
about feeling valued and loved and heard and understood.
Okay.
right? So it's not that the heart is listening. It's really that when we unhook ourselves from that outside focus, right?
Okay.
I need, right? I need for you to value me. I need for you to respect me and to love me. That's out of our control.
Right. Right.
And the more, so the mind, the automatic mind is really organized around trying to control that which we have zero control over. And when we can start to let go of that outer focus of control, which is all to protect ourselves from
Mm-hmm.
pain, fear, that's when we can actually let our heart start speaking what is truth, right? So we can listen to a different voice
Right.
comes from, right, that really lives within our heart. That's where our intuition lives.
Yep.
That's where
Yep.
our inner knowing lives.
And the way this is where it kind of overlaps with the core values work that I do as well, because I keep telling people, because there's a big talk of lots and lots and lots of talk about values out there, business values, and these are family values, and these are American values, and these are whatever values. And I'm
Yes.
like, but your core values are
Yes.
always inside you. They are never outside you.
Yes.
I'm actually teaching a workshop this Friday to a chamber leaders group. And I always start with, if you come to me and say they're faith, family, and country, we're going to start over because those are all outside of you.
That's right.
And so this idea of taking the things, and a lot of times, we start with what's outside. We have to, especially like as parents, when we're working with our children, we work on behaviors. These are outside, right? And then we work on the heart. I mean, I've
Yeah.
got a nearly 16-year-old, and it's like now with the behaviors, I'm looking at him saying, this behavior makes me concerned for what's going on inside.
Right.
you
Oh,
know? And
yes, I know
he's
that.
like, I don't like that. And I'm like, me neither,
Right.
So is that now am I hearing a little bit better of what you're trying to say there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. But I think that without really understanding that as human beings, we all have the same basic needs,
Yeah.
right? We're really so much more alike than we are different. And so when we let ourselves lean into the the shame, the guilt, the
Hmm.
fear, the anger, the sadness, all that stuff, when we lean into it and use those experiences as our greatest teaching tool, as our greatest opportunity to really learn about a level of ourselves that's way deeper, right? Like most of us don't even recognize that we have this automatic unconscious mind.
Hmm.
Uh, I Carl Jung really kind of he's got this quote that just sort of wraps it up. He says, "Until you make the unconscious conscious,
Yeah.
it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate."
Yes. I've quoted that one before.
Yes, just kind of
Um,
sums it up. It's like bringing all of the automatic self to the forefront and really learning to like, oh, that's my automatic mind. That's
mhm.
not really me, right? So, I mean, I think to explain it, I'll just briefly say what the steps of the mind method are.
Oh,
Okay.
perfect. I'm just going to ask that really quick.
Oh, perfect. So we're right right in sync. The M step is meet your inner critic. So it's really, like I said, leaning in and just looking, what is my automatic mind saying? Why does it say it? When does it say it? Who triggers it? What triggers it? And really just doing that work of just observing that mind.
Mm.
The I step is investigate the indication signs. I call those the blinking red lights when you want to just scream at somebody or send that nasty email or you want to give somebody the finger in traffic, right? Or you want to like
Mhm.
eat the whole pint of ice cream or drink the wine or, like those. Or on the flip side, you want to over exercise or overwork or
Mm.
over function or keep yourself busy, right? all of this, right? They're opposite sides of the same coin, which is right, those are the blinking red lights that alert you that your automatic mind has taken over. The N step, and this is the crucial step, it's neutralize the never ending message. So, again, if we're going back to the core of who we are, every single one of
Yeah.
us struggles with, and we could just kind of boil it all down to in some way, I am not enough. We can fill in the blank of what it is, but it's in some way, I'm not enough or it's not enough, right?
Right.
And we all have that place. So when we really understand what our never ending message is, we recognize I had the same stuff going on, right? Like I said, 7, 17, 27, 37, 57, doesn't matter, right? It's the same never ending message that keeps showing up. We use the M and the I and the N step to get so clear about, oh, there she is. We give her a name. There
Mm.
she is. That's not me. So that when she shows up hijacking our mind, body, and spirit, right? And
Hmm.
having us feel things and behave in ways that are not the way that we want to live life, when we can unhook from that, now we can intentionally and deliberately create very different beliefs and thoughts to rest in that create different emotions and behaviors. And that leads to the D step, which is design your life. If you
Hmm.
use these tiny moments, moment by moment, the tiniest little triggers as those teaching moments, and you keep unhooking, right? It seems very small. You keep unhooking and plugging yourself into those very different thoughts and beliefs over the course of not all that long, right? Month or two, you are engaging with life in a fundamentally new way. The people that used to trigger you aren't triggering you as much. The things that used to rock your world, you're noticing, you know what? I'm getting over these things way more quickly.
Right.
I'm really more able to be at peace, which then just has the ripple effect of changing every important facet of your life.
Yeah, and you used the words confirming evidence that we keep accumulating. And what you've
Yeah.
just described is one of my favorite terms, which is disconfirming evidence. It's this disconfirming evidence that says all that thought stuff that you thought, like you said, here she is, right? She's not you. And all those confirming things you've heard now, we're disconfirming that. You have now have new. And so I think when other people talk about forming new neural pathways or forming new thoughts, this is what it could look like.
Yes.
But it's just in a whole different way. So,
It's yeah,
yeah.
it basically the way that I describe the mind method is it is the best of psychology, spirituality, ancient wisdom,
Yeah.
neuroscience that is just sort of packaged in a way that's easy to understand because you're right, this so much of this is brain science, right? Our right? It's like we can really change our physical brains and our
Hmm.
physical bodies, right? We simply by learning how to decipher where our energy and our focus is at any given moment.
So I was going to, at this moment, pivot into talking about midlife stuff.
Yes.
But you and I, right before we hit record, said, are we going to acknowledge that we're recording this on November the 6th of 2024? And in the United States, we are the morning after the election. And
Yes.
we agreed that it was okay to go there because
Yeah.
what you're describing right now, I think on some level, every human, and not just, I mean, I've been on threads all night, I was up till 1 o'clock in the morning and I was on threads, and there's like global communities are talking to us, we are talking back. And I think on some level, every human in the world might feel a little bit traumatized by this particular US election series or the
Yes.
election season.
Yes.
And so I would love to pivot into some practical understanding of,
Mhm.
because I can see myself having voted as many times as I have. I think my first election that I voted in was 1984, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm 58, I'm owning all of that. And so I see myself throughout the years voting differently and feeling differently. And there have been elections where I've cried for good things and cried for bad things. And there have been elections that I thought, we're doomed. And then there'll be elections where I've thought, this is amazing. The reality is, I'm still here. We're still in the United States. But I would like to let you kind of speak a little bit to this idea that we're all so raw
Yes.
and kind of where that comes from and, how we can practically apply some of this stuff to that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for bringing this up. So, we hate the unknown as human beings. Again, if we're looking at this from a neuroscience perspective, it goes all the way back to our human evolution,
Mm,
where, survival is about predictability and safety and control. Okay.
yeah,
So this morning we are hit with the complete unknown and the collective fear of, what our worlds could be. And the thing is, that is what, while that's what our brains are hardwired to do, to seek out the possible dangers and threats
yeah,
so that we can avoid them. What we're doing now is, all of this is imagining the worst possible scenarios. Okay. Now,
absolutely.
here's the other piece of this that I think is super important. If we look at the individual journey of our entire lives, okay, especially for those of us that are in midlife, okay,
Mhm.
we have dealt with a lot of pain and a lot of struggle and a lot of fear and a lot of doubt and a lot of, moments of dread in our own personal lives. And now that we've got some wisdom under our belt, right, we can look back at some of the most painful, excruciating times in our lives. And we can say, without a doubt, standing here, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Sure.
Thank God that relationship fell apart. Thank God I got fired. Thank God, right? All these things. Thank God that didn't work, right?
Yes, and there are
Because
plenty of times that I'm like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm so glad that X, right?
100%. Okay. So if we can sit here and know that that's what's made us as individuals who we are today,
Hmm.
then I think what we have to also understand is that humanity, all of humanity, is on a collective journey. And that if you know, we don't know. We have no idea why this potential collective darkness, right, that we're all facing, we don't know why it's here. But what I know just from the human journey is that darkness leads to light.
Mm.
And that, if I can trust in the flow of life, if I can trust whatever you call it, you could call
Hmm.
it God or the universe or spirit or, whatever it is that you call it. I do believe that there is a reason for this. And maybe it's that we've got to go even darker so that we can wake up as a culture and
Mm.
really recognize that um, we just need to change what we've viewed as important
Oh, yes.
for far too long. So that, I woke up with the same heavy heart. I woke up with I did. You're
Yeah,
right, the
yeah.
experience of dread. But I what I'm doing all day, right, in practicing what I preach, right, is just in unraveling myself
Mm.
from this imagined danger and fear and leaning into trusting that overall in our collective journey,
Yeah,
there's a reason for this. And
yeah.
whether we see it or not right now, at some point we will. And we can't know when we're going to see it. And
Right.
right, we can't know that. And so we just need to stay present and stay in trust. And one other thing that I'm going to say is what we can do, because we feel so helpless, but what we can do with our part is to ground ourselves in that peace and trust and surrender instead of getting collectively swept away by all the fear and the
Yeah.
anger and the vitriol that, right? Like do what you can to stay grounded in trust and surrender.
So I've had a couple of thoughts about this because like we're gonna just keep coming it back, bringing it back to the midlife thing as well. I actually
Oh,
went into menopause. I'm postmenopausal 15 years. I had early menopause at 43.
yeah.
And my son was actually adopted at 42. And so I'm a
Wow.
58-year-old mom with a nearly 16-year-old who's learning
That's
to drive.
amazing.
I know,
Wow.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but one of the things that I've finally taken ownership of, and I don't think I knew I was going to tell it on this, but I knew that it would probably come out at some point, is I've just started HRT. And because I didn't know that there were things it could help me with that, that I'd been experiencing because I thought, well, I'm done, right? And
Yeah.
my mother was a breast cancer. I lost my mother to breast cancer, and there's all kinds of things tied in with that. But what I'm
Mhm.
getting at is the conversation I had on Friday with my doctor was, Andrea, we like to have like 20, we have like 20 symptoms, and we like to put them in a big bucket. And we want to be able to say, here's one thing that's going to cure all of that. And she
Right.
said, it never happens that way, which
Right.
I felt really stupid having her, not stupid, but I felt a little, chastised because I spent 23 years in the medical research field. So it's not like I didn't know that in reality, but I had gone into that very hopeful. I had like things I was going to do, and I'm already doing all the right things. I'm doing the yoga, I'm doing the sleep hygiene, I'm eating well, not as well as I should, or not as well as I could, let me put it that way, and not as well as I want to. Um,
Right.
but I'm exercising, I'm doing strength training, all those things.
Yeah.
And she said, you're doing all the right things. This could help you for a little while, but you're getting close to 60. So there's a certain amount that we can't do. But what I found was I was despondent when I left because even though I left with a prescription, I was like, but it's not going to fix everything. And then the next morning I woke up and I thought, well, why can't you still be hopeful? Why
Yeah.
can't you still do all of those same things with double now motivation? And
Mm.
I
Yeah.
have awakened today from a similar experience, feeling hopeful about certain things that might be different, feeling hopeful about what could. I mean, I am a woman's leadership coach for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Anybody that's listening to this who thinks that I wouldn't want a woman in the White House is, I mean, it's going to take a lot for me to not want a particular woman in the White House. I mean, I'm just excited about it. And
Yes.
just that
Yes.
idea and opportunity. And so there's so many different aspects that I feel crushed over. And there are so many different symptoms, shall we say,
Yeah.
that I'm looking at. And the fear mongering on, because as a political agents, that's what they not they have to do, but it's like that's just kind of the environment that we live in these days. It's like they've
Right.
figured out that you even said it, we all want to be safe and to I typed it out and it's like we all want to be safe and protected.
Yeah.
And so what I'm waking up to is realizing that I had 20 symptoms that I wanted cured with one thing, but so
Right.
did everybody else.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
everybody else had 20 symptoms that they wanted cured with one vote.
That's right.
And it never happens that way.
Agreed.
And so while I'm still kind of walking through a little bit, a lot, I'm slogging through a little bit of heavy-hearted and for different reasons and different people. My husband, I had rehearsed how I wanted to speak with people who had lost or who were heavy-hearted in the election. I'd not really thought about how I would care for my own heart if it was going to be heavy-hearted. So
Yes.
all of these things are just kind of coming home to rest and being hit with this idea that these are things that I can unhook myself from. And I
Yeah.
can say, here's your 20 symptoms. We're going to put them in the bucket. We're going to move them over here. This little lady she needs a name. And just like
Beautiful.
my doctor said, we're going to tackle each one separately.
That's beautiful.
And
Yes.
it doesn't mean it doesn't mean we don't grieve. It doesn't mean we don't like,
Yep.
right before I came down to record the intro for this podcast, I looked at my husband and I said, of those 7 stages of grief, right now I'm just in anger. And,
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's okay and it's all good, but
Yes.
being willing to, I love this neutralize, this never-ending message, right?
Yeah,
Being willing to say, it doesn't have to be just the way that you're reacting to this doesn't have to be the only way.
absolutely. Because worry, again, I'm going to quote Eckhart Tolle now. He says worry is an emotion that pretends to be necessary, right? Our worry is this weird illusion, right? It's like driving a car with a rear view mirror and thinking that you're getting somewhere, right? This
Ah,
worry doesn't do anything but rattle everything from our nervous system to our mood to how we engage in our life. And so, the other thing to your point is like, you're giving her a name and you're saying, okay, I see, yep, I'm grieving, I'm angry, right, I've got all of these things, and that can be there, and I can give myself like time to experience that. And then I'm going to consciously unhook and I'm going to get back into just being present and trusting, right? It doesn't
yeah,
mean negating that other part of yourself. It's owning that part of yourself, but
yeah,
recognizing you don't have to get swallowed by
right.
that and go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and you mentioned a little earlier about how we get swept up in this fear,
Yeah.
and it's astonishing to me how when that happens, we lose our ability, and you said this at the very, very beginning of our conversation, we lose our ability to see from the perspective of someone else.
Yeah.
Because if we're honest, we will own the fact that everyone who voted was swept up in some kind of fear and was swept up in some kind of message. I mean, I'm sure there are a few people out there that have got a good stake in the ground and are really even keeled and even minded over all of this. But so let's talk about some specific things that we can do that will help us kind of navigate through this process. Because it's rare for me, but this episode is being recorded on the 6th and it's coming out on the 11th. So it's coming out next Monday. So it's
Yeah.
very timely. And that
Yes.
was one of the reasons why I felt really comfortable actually having this conversation because it's going to be so timely. So for those
Yes.
of us who, when this comes out, the Monday after the election,
Yes.
what are some practical things we can do? I mean, you work in that area. What are some
Yeah.
practical things that we can do besides the like I'm going to go for a walk kind of thing, right?
Right, right, right.
Not that there's anything
So
wrong with that.
no, no, that's great.
I did it
That
this
no,
morning.
self-care,
Yes.
self-care is hugely important. But okay, okay. But really, I think where we want to start is by allowing ourselves the room and the space to go into our deepest fear,
Yeah.
to really get truthful and honest with ourselves. And right, just like we make time for exercise or for meal prep, to make room and space in your day to sit with yourself and to, like I say, lean into the pain. Let that pain come up. We're so wanting to, okay, how do I get rid of it? I'm just going to go for a walk. I'm going to keep
Sure.
myself busy. I'm going to do yoga and I'm going to do all of these things. But no, we actually want to turn towards it and let
Yeah.
ourselves feel it and give ourselves room if we have to cry or scream or right or shake or get nauseous or
Mhm.
whatever it is. We really want to let it come up so we can see what's underneath that. Okay. And then we can do that by journaling. That's like the most
Okay.
for me, the quickest way is to do what I call a brain dump. Like you
Yep.
don't censor anything, you just like, throw it all up onto the all right, it's a terrible analogy, but it's like,
Yep. No.
throwing it up
Verbal
onto the
vomit.
page,
Uh-huh.
right? Yep. Yeah. And then, when and a lot of people say, well, that doesn't make me feel better because now I'm just like reading what right, what I'm afraid of. But no, we want to actually go deeper because once we see our fear, now we can start engaging in, okay, and like, what if that happened? And how would I handle it? And do I have what would be some things that I could do to keep myself feeling like, okay, I if the worst thing were to happen, I could figure it out. I could
Right.
handle it if and when it happens. So I don't need to keep spending all this energy on worry and fear if it happens.
Right.
Because the other thing about this, one of the things that I was reflecting on this morning, I went back to this very, profound moment on the morning of 9/11, right?
Mm, mm,
And I remember looking up at the sky. I was pregnant with my first son at the time,
mm.
right? And like, and here we are, right? Like
Yeah.
we have survived things
Mm,
in our culture that were so incredibly um debilitatingly scary, right? We've
yeah.
survived it. So that would be my first suggestion, is to really let yourself do that deep inner work to understand where is your fear really coming from, and to know that you already possess the ability to deal with anything that comes your way. And so you don't have to keep having that anticipatory
Yeah.
fear and anxiety if it comes.
So I know you probably have another step, but I want to stay on this one just a second because I think that it's really important. Like even my son said, "Oh my gosh, my teeth are going to get soft because they're going to take fluoride out of the water." And I'm like, "Well, for starters, your teeth are already formed, you know?" And so it's like I did literally had to do this practice
Mm.
before he got on the school bus this morning in order to, alleviate some anxiety just for my 15-year-old. And I'm like, for starters, your teeth are going to be fine. And
Yeah.
we have fluoride in our toothpaste. And we have, we can get fluoride treatments at the dentist. And, so, and I don't know that any of that's going to happen. But I also had friends who were absolutely terrified that had the election gone in another way, that we would be in war immediately. And that is so I don't personally, I mean, I have family members who are in the military, but I don't personally have someone who would have to go, a son or a husband or anything, or a daughter. I don't have anyone that would need to go. But to understand that it's not just me, I want to take this back to the whole humanity piece that you mentioned a minute ago. It's not just me that is having to unhook from these worst case scenario fears.
Yeah.
And I mean, because I saw a post from someone that I love dearly, and it was like, pro-life, anti-war. And I'm like, but there's this many other things, and how do we narrow it down to one? And we've all kind of bought into this a little bit. So when we're doing that for ourselves, how do we actually, do you have something that could help us look outside of ourselves? Because we want to look inside, but also to those around us who may be suffering in similar or opposite ways.
Yes. Yeah. So the thing is, in order to get ourselves grounded, we really have to have some vision that we are like a North Star, that we're intentionally looking at and focusing our conscious and deliberate attention towards. That's how I want to feel, right? So being in fear and anxiety and worry does nothing to change reality. It
Sure.
changes your personal reality, right?
Mhm. Right.
Because now you're just a mess and you're anxious, and right, and that's going to have a ripple effect in your life. I do believe that the more of us that can awaken in this and really start to understand that we are the creators of our individual reality. In other words, I have a personal choice right now, in this very moment, whether I'm going to use my mind to create fear, or whether I'm going to use my mind to create peace and love. Okay. Now, I want to just say about collective humanity, doesn't matter what side of the election that you're on, or right,
Mm-hmm.
what drives our behavior is fear. So, even being able to understand the language of the heart of humanity is okay. Like, there are people out there that really what they are is just scared little boys and little girls trying to control parts of life that we have no control over. So
Terrifying.
doing
Hmm.
our individual part
Right.
in letting go of what we can't control. We can't control the government. We can't control what's going to happen. We can't control how this is going to go, but we can control how we experience ourselves and our life right now. And if
Yeah.
more of us are able to really do the inner work that has us awaken to choosing right now
Mm.
peace, joy, love, connection, compassion for ourselves, even compassion for the people
Hmm.
that we don't agree with,
Yep.
right? When we bring that level of love and acceptance and compassion, where we accept our own deepest faults and flaws and insecurities and fears and doubts, and we
Mhm.
can stand tall and own that part of ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. By doing that individually, energetically, we are part of a larger collective. And so the more people that step into what we could say is an awakened consciousness, we do individually have the power to impact how things go collectively, right? And
Yeah.
you and I see that all the time because
We think we function in a vacuum and we don't.
we don't,
It's all
right?
connected.
All right, all of the people who we've served and their lives have changed. Now they're changing other people's lives, right?
Yeah.
They're showing up as different women and different, right, employers and different mothers and different wives and different sisters and daughters, and right, there's a right. So that would be
Okay.
what I would urge for people is to do
Yeah.
your own.
Yeah, do your own work. And I mean, that's one of, I've recently said that. If you're not willing to do your own work, please don't lead people. um,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, because every once in a while we just have to say it like it is. But just the reality of understanding that as fearful as I am, as uh, anxious as I can be, and I love the reminder that worry does nothing for you, but that everybody else around me is feeling that on a different level or a different scale or about different things.
Yes,
And I want to be able to move forward in a way that makes a difference. I find also that I'm waking up, even though I feel heavy-hearted and sad and even a little gutted, I think I feel a little more galvanized. It's like I think our work is so much more important today than it was yesterday.
I
And
agree. Yep.
and
Yep.
so
For
it's
sure.
like, okay, so the world is going to keep spinning.
Yep.
And this is another piece that I remember when and I'm sure you've had these experiences. You talk about things that we've gone through that have been very catastrophic, either for our nation or personally. For me, in 2017, when I got the phone call, my mother had been on hospice for several months, and we got the phone call, you need to come because I'm just in Charlottesville, Virginia. They're over in Richmond.
Yep.
And I remember it was February, and here in Charlottesville, it was just a gorgeous, warm day like it is today, which is kind of weird, and with blue sky. And, it's like, how did you pick the best weather day for this terrible news? But I remember walking to my car garage and on the street corner waiting for the light to change, thinking, don't they know my mother is dying? You
Mhm.
know, and realizing that I'm a piece of a big whole. I am, the world doesn't spin around Andrea.
Right.
And I knew that already, but at 50, it was quite stark to see
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
And to just kind of be willing to say, we all experience that on days like today for some of us, or 9/11 is a great example. And so does that fit into, that was just something that I felt like I needed to share, because I think that's a way of changing perspective too.
Absolutely. It really is. We're talking about a moment by
Right.
moment practice. Catching yourself in what we could say is just an automatic worry and fear habit that isn't leaving us.
Yeah.
And the more that we can just put it right here and go, oh, yep, there it is. There's my habit, right? There's my conditioned automatic mind. I'm not going to, it's not bad. It's not wrong. It's just, this is where I am. And I have the choice right now to ground myself in presence and in calm and peace and trust. And sometimes we have to do that 10 times in an hour, and
Yeah.
that's okay. And the more that we keep practicing, there she is. I'm going to unhook. I'm going to bring myself back. And right. And it's like I call it remember, forget, remember, forget, right? And we're just building a muscle. We're
Yeah.
building a
Yeah.
muscle about distinguishing the difference between ourselves and that automatic conditioned self.
Yeah, and talk about my son a minute ago. We talk about as he learns and as he grows, and even with the women that I work with, a lot of times they're like, what's the delta between the automatic response and the new behavior? It's like as that gets shorter and shorter, and the forgetting gets shorter and shorter and shorter. I don't know that we'll ever not forget.
We
Uh,
won't.
there may
Yep,
be little places where we might forget, where we might not forget, but it's just good to remember that that's just part of being human. It's a
right.
beauty of who we are. It means that we have a whole lot more humility. And I come from a faith space. My husband's actually a pastor. And so for us, it's being able to say, this is the kind of humility that I want to have in understanding my place in the universe, understanding I am a small piece, but yet an atom moves and things happen. And
Absolutely.
a stone gets tossed in the pond and the ripples touch everyone.
That's right.
Um, this has
Yep.
been beautiful. This has been lovely. I'm so
Loved it.
glad we went ahead and did this.
Yes, yes.
Because I'm not gonna lie to you, there was a part of me this morning like, do I want to do this today? I don't think I want to do
Yeah, I
it.
know, I know. I hear you.
But
This
I'm
was a
so
really
glad we
great
did.
conversation. Yep. Yeah.
So before we cut out of here, two things. The um the website that so I want to tell people where they can find you, which is
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so you can find me at Dethroning Your Inner Critic. I'm dethroningyourinnercritic.com is my website. That's all of my social media handles. My podcast is Dethroning Your Inner Critic. My book is Dethroning Your Inner Critic. And so you can find everything there. And if you're interested, I do have a free inner critic assessment, which is actually a really comprehensive report that shows you which of what I call five different inner critics,
Okay.
what percentage they occupy your life and how they're impacting not just you, but the people in your life. And so
Mm.
you can go to innercriticassessment.com and take that free assessment.
And we'll have that in the show notes. But if you just go to your website, it's a nice magenta button at the top. So
Yeah.
it's easy to find because
Yeah.
she said, Andrew, you just go here. And I went to her website and I'm like, oh, we just got to click the button. So
That's
I
right.
love clicking the easy button. It's
That's right.
wonderful. Um,
Yeah.
so if there was one piece of advice or something, maybe even that you could be optimistic about, what would it be? What would you leave with our listeners?
Yeah. Oh boy. I think just to understand that you are so much more than the automatic thoughts and beliefs that you
Mm,
have floating around in your mind, and that doing your own inner work really does have the power to alter so much more than you could ever imagine and give you a life that is beyond your wildest dreams.
I love that. Joanna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea. It's been great.
Been lovely.